Welcome back, everyone, once again to a new installment of Screenplay Rewind. I'm Jeff.
I'm Ron.
It is officially October, Ron.
Yes.
The best time of the fucking year, man.
'Tis the season, my friend.
'Tis the season to be spoopy. And we kind of started off like our Halloween-ish stuff with Your Next, but we are in full-blown Halloween mode now with a little movie you may or may not have heard of called The Exorcist.
What?
Yeah. But before we jump into The Exorcist, let's do our little Q&A section. If you have any questions or prompts that you would like Ron and myself to answer, you can always hit us up on Twitter at SPRFilmcast or email us, and that is screenplayrewind@gmail.com. But this week's question comes in from me.
What?
You're welcome.
You never do this.
I hacked the system. No, I have a question.
You consulted your Ouija board?
I did. I said, go fuck yourself. It was very awkward.
And then I left the room.
No, to celebrate Spooptober, though. My question, Ron, have you ever had any supernatural run-ins where you think you might have seen a ghost? You've had anything weird happen that like freaked you out that you can't fully explain? That is my question to you, good sir, because I don't think we've ever talked about this if you have had something happen to you.
We have not.
Which is fucking crazy because you and I talk way too much and we've known each other for
Right.
like 13 years now.
Yeah, that's the part that blows me away more than anything. I was thinking about it the other day. I've known you almost as long as I've been married to my wife. And I was like, wait, what?
Yeah, you've known me for twice as long as you've known your kids. So that makes me like an honorary member of the family, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
You know, just like adopt me, give me part of the inheritance. I figure that's only fair.
There's a reason they call you Uncle Jeff.
Yeah, that's true.
I have had like weird feelings about like I feel like something is in the room. I've never had a real like supernatural encounter though.
Okay. Well, do you have any like notable moments of that you'd like to talk about? Kind of set the spoopy mood.
No, just like I've mentioned before that I've gone to like various private Christian schools and was raised with like kind of a religious background. Non-denominational, so praying in tongues is a thing. I've just had like weird feelings where I felt like a presence in the room and then like prayed in tongues and then like I felt that feeling go away. But other than that, I've never had like anything like fly across the room or like felt like I've seen something before.
I have not
really
had
think of
anything. I have not have anything specifically happen to me either, but my family does have some like weird shit that's happened to them.
Do tell.
Okay, so my grandparents.
I mean, if you're comfortable, if you want to.
Oh yeah. So my grandparents live in McAllister, right?
Uh-huh.
And on my mother's side, my grandmother married my peepaw. He's not, like a blood grandpa like they'd married.
Okay, Peepaw is definitely the name of our next Dark Souls character that when we do Drunk Souls, yes.
Yeah. So Peepaw had a wife before my grandma. She had passed away a few years before he had remarried my Meemaw.
Okay.
There is a photograph that my family still has.
Oh.
After my Meemaw and Peepaw had moved into their house on Redbud. It's just like
something shows up in the background. Tell me.
They are standing together. My Meemaw and my Peepaw are standing in the front yard of the house. And there is a face in one of the windows.
Oh.
Yeah. And there was no one else in the house, they say.
Ooh.
As always, just creeped me out once they fucking told me that. I was like, why y'all fucking tell me that while I'm here on fucking spring break? Fuck you guys.
But yeah. Man.
It's pretty good. I unfortunately have never had anything like super spoopy happen to myself. I'm not a person that is just like, like some people are adamant that like nothing creepy can exist and that's all a bunch of like just bullshit.
Right.
I am not of that sort. I am kind of like open to it just because I can't outright say that it doesn't exist because but I haven't had anything happen to where like I can adamantly confirm that it does exist. So I'm just kind of like in the middle. But
yeah,
I thought that'd be like.
My outlook on the whole thing is it agnostic I'm looking for, where
Agnostic is where you're open to it, but you can't adamantly say that it exists or doesn't exist. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at on
Same.
religion, supernatural stuff, or whatever. Because there's not a lot of evidence for. There's not really a lot of evidence against either. At the same time, the idea of a creator makes sense, right? Like we can explain everything mathematically. An apple tree can be explained mathematically. Like that sounds designed. That doesn't sound like random happenstance. Like when you can explain the world around you in math, that usually something engineered is explained by math, right? But we can explain the entire world around us basically in math. So it makes sense. But at the same time, there's not a lot of evidence for or a lot of evidence against. And this is obviously in no way a commentary on anyone's personal beliefs.
Oh yeah. Just us kind of spitballing, just kind of like our general observations.
Just talking.
But yeah, this is an all-inclusive podcast. Like you're welcome, as long as you're not hurting anybody. You're welcome to do whatever the fuck you want, and I don't give a shit because it doesn't affect me.
Or
if only the internet, just as a whole. Hey, that thing that doesn't affect me at all, I just don't care.
Exactly.
If only more people had that outlook, there'd be a whole lot less just fucking assholery in the human race as a whole.
And to expand on what you said. If you are hurting someone and it's consensual, then, go for it, I guess.
If you're into that sort of thing.
If you're into that.
We have had something spoopy happen to us.
What's that?
We had...
Well, tell me. What is it?
Bobby trying to fucking scare us on Halloween that one year. Do you remember that?
Dude, I have not released those videos, but I have them. I've thought about posting them.
You probably should, because that was pretty funny, where he just showed up out of fucking nowhere. What was he in? Was it the actual face, the mask from Scream, or was it like a generic one? I forget what he was wearing. He was wearing some costume as he tried to scare us.
I think it's the generic one that Scream used, if that makes sense. Because that was a thing before Scream. Scream made it a thing.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But, yeah.
Ghostface, I think it's that.
Ghostface is what they call him in the movie, yeah. I shouldn't say that. I haven't actually seen Scream. I don't know if that's what they call him in the movie. I know that's what he's referred to as.
Yeah. I think Scream would probably be kind of dated now, but for the time, it's Wes Craven. Wes Craven never really made like terrible movies. So
that's
probably pretty decent.
That's what made Nev Campbell a thing, right? A Scream?
Yeah, I think so. I think that was like the first thing that
I like Nev Campbell. We talked about her on Skyscraper.
Yeah, she's pretty good.
I like Nev Campbell.
I can't really think of anything else she's been in. It seems like she was so synonymous with Scream. I think she actually came back for like the new Scream a couple of years ago.
Scream and Nev Campbell is just like fucking Halloween and Jamie Lee Curtis. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for trying to bail me out there. I should mention I've been cocktailing a bit. I'm feeling pretty good.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I've been drinking Hibiki, which is by Suntory. I mention it by name because that is the whiskey that Bobby has not just given me once; he's given me twice. Oh. And the 2 out of 2 times I've had it was from Bobby, our number 1 fan, and I am drinking my second glass of it right now.
Well, there you go. I wish I liked it, but I just can't stand whiskey.
I was gonna say, how do you take your whiskey? I guess I just got my answer.
I take it with lemonade.
Well, with lemonade,
because I like Jameson and lemonade. Limerick lemonades are fucking great.
I was gonna say Limerick lemonade, right?
If you can give me whiskey that doesn't taste like whiskey, I'm all about it. If I have to drink it straight, like drinking bourbon straight makes me want to vomit. I can't stand the taste of whiskey by itself.
I am actually in agreement with you, but this one is pretty smooth. I gotta say.
I remember being okay for my relativity of whiskey tastes. I remember being like passable. And I feel bad too if it's expensive.
Oh, it's just expensive. I only have it because Bobby gave it to me.
Yeah, and I feel I'm doing a disgraceful act. Yeah, like a disservice to the whiskey by drinking it just because I don't like it. It doesn't mean it's bad,
So the reason I was going to ask you how you take your whiskey is because, like Father Damien, I do ice and a little bit of water. And that is a divisive, I don't know if you know this about the whiskey community.
Oh, yeah.
That is a very divisive thing. How dare you water down your whiskey? But it's not watering it down. There is actual science behind what happens when you mix a little bit of water and a little bit of ice with whiskey, and the way
Is it like a Mythbusters episode?
you know how when wine connoisseurs pop open a bottle of wine and then let it sit for a few minutes to breathe, the wine has to breathe.
Yeah.
Apparently, when you mix a little bit of water and ice with whiskey, there is a chemical reaction that happens that actually enhances the flavor and actually brings out a lot of like aromatics and a lot of taste and stuff it's there, but it's locked away. You don't get it when you just drink it straight. And I tend to find that even with this expensive ass smooth whiskey, a little bit of ice and a little bit of water, it tastes very different. And I actually drink it straight with a little bit of water and a little bit of ice rather than mixing it.
Well, there you go. And now our 3 other listeners who are adamant fucking whiskey straight, no ice, no water, have now unsubscribed. Gosh, Ron, good job.
I think this may be the first episode, though, that one of us was, when we first talked about recording, we've been in the green room for a little bit. I was buzzed at that point. I haven't drank in a while since my kids were born. I've been kind of not on principle, just too tired and not caring enough to drink. Haven't really drank as much.
Yeah.
Last weekend, I think it was, I drank just a glass. And with my weight and how much I used to drink, a glass was not enough to do anything to me. I got full-blown drunk by the end of that glass. I'm now on my second glass tonight, just to let you know.
Are you gonna be just like vomiting up green ooze like like Reagan tonight? Is that what's gonna be going?
Only because I had a big heaping bowl of pea soup before we got into this episode.
There you go. See, you wouldn't have vomited up green slime if you just had not watered down your fucking whiskey, Ron. Okay, he's got to listen to the people, man.
Okay, before we get into it, we're just about to get into it, but I just got to ask you one more thing.
One more thing.
Just one more thing. I don't have a Columbo impression. That's why I just said it without it doing anything. There's only one Peter Falk, people. Get over it. How do you feel about supernatural horror? Does it give you kind of the heebie-jeebies at all? Does it get under your skin? Because we've talked about before how you and I kind of, even just in this episode, how you and I, we kind of believe but not believe at the same time. Does any of that kind of affect you in any way?
So here's the thing. When it comes to horror, just in general, I prefer supernatural horror because it's scarier to me.
Okay.
Like the idea of just being so far out of your element that you can't do shit is so much scarier to me than I know Michael Myers and Jason end up kind of becoming supernatural in sequels, but if you just look back at them as like dudes, if you give me like a katana or like a fucking machine gun, I feel like I could fuck up like Michael Myers a little bit. But if you're talking about like a demon or the thing, do you remember in Sinister, like Bagul?
Oh my god!
When you're fighting like a pagan god and you're just like, yeah, I'm fucked because you can't do anything about it. That is the part of it that like scares me because I kind of like put myself in that situation and you just realize just like how fucked you are and how out of your element you are, that it scares me more. What's your kind of like a feeling on it?
So, okay, before I answer that, I just want to expand on one thing you said. I don't know about Bobby, actually, now that I think about it. Bobby may. But you're the only other person I've ever met that kind of gets into the movie the way I do. Like, I don't feel like I'm like the main character or anything, but I feel like I'm in the room as something is happening when I watch a movie. I kind of like laser focus on it that way.
Same.
And you couple that with I don't want to say religious upbringing because that kind of infers something about my parents. My parents put me in private school because we live in Oklahoma. Private school is synonymous with religious schools. And they just thought I'd get a better education and be safer in a private school. It wasn't for religious reasons. I was
They
there.
just wanted you to have the non-public school
Yeah,
garbage ass
exactly.
experience. Yeah.
Exactly. And the problem is, since we live in Oklahoma, which is part of the Bible Belt, and they claim things that they do in Oklahoma is for religion, but religion kind of teaches the opposite of what happens in Oklahoma. Anyways, that's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah. We can have a separate podcast. Here's 100 reasons, one per week, of why it fucking sucks to live in Oklahoma.
It says something. It speaks volumes that like one of the top probably 3 private schools in Oklahoma is a Catholic school, which is Holland Hall. That speaks volumes, right, as to the state of private schools in Oklahoma. But we, because of that, I have kind of a religious upbringing, oddly, even though my parents were religious in their childhood, not so much in their adulthood. And I kind of got that from being in private school up to 8th grade. At 9th grade, I went public.
Yeah.
Because of that, even though I kind of identify agnostic, something about spiritual horror, like The Exorcist, gets to me. It gets under my skin. Something like Sinister, like you mentioned, really gets to me. Because it's the one thing, like you said, you can't really do anything about. Like, at the end of the day, Michael Myers or Freddy, even though they represent, in the context of the story, a force of nature, they're kind of a dude with a machete, right? I don't think
I would disagree slightly on Freddy, because like Freddy being in Dream World can kind of like, it's not the same as like taking a gunfight to a Michael Myers IRL,
Hold on.
He can kind of like fuck you up by just the context of being in a dream.
Jason. I meant Jason. I'm sorry.
Oh,
I'm
and
drunk.
Jason. Okay. It's a whiskey talking.
No,
yeah.
I would disagree with myself as well. Freddy is a dream world. I meant Jason when I said Freddy. I was thinking Friday the 13th, and I said Freddy. My apologies.
All good.
But Michael Myers and Jason, I don't think I would win in a fight with them. But at the end of the day, they're a dude with a machete, right? But something like The Exorcist, the reason I picked it as horror, like Alien and Predator, we've covered those on the podcast before. Alien, we end up beating them because they're an animal. Depending on how you look at them, if you read the books, they're not a wild animal. But in the movies, they're depicted as a wild animal. And they trap them and defeat them the same way you would kind of hunt a wild animal, like exotic game, right? In Predator, it is an advanced alien species, but at the end of the day, they're hunting the most dangerous game. And if you are military, if you are a hunter, you kind of think the way they do, and they're a physical being that bleeds, and if it bleeds, we can kill it.
Yeah.
But when it comes to Sinister, when it comes to The Exorcist, when it comes to the supernatural, it doesn't bleed. And if it doesn't bleed, can you kill it? Can you slow it down, or can you kill it?
It's so abstract.
Exactly. And anything
like
can happen.
Yeah.
And one thing we're going to talk about something later. I haven't actually seen the movie we're going to talk about later, that I plan to mention later, but it kind of infers something about this movie at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah, it kind of gets under my skin in a way. The way you watched me cringe when you showed me Sinister for the first time.
God, I love that movie.
I want to say at my last house, but it might have been this one. I can't remember.
I think it was at your current house.
It might be. I didn't know you for very long when I was at my last house, but I think you went to my last house a couple of times, right?
Yeah, I went to your old house a few times. I think all we pretty much watched though was Bleach. Because I think even when
I showed you season 1, I didn't show you anything past there.
When we watched even when we watched The Thing and especially Alien for the first time,
that was the apartment.
That was at your like interim apartment before your house was built.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to say something. I don't remember if I said it in the Alien and Thing episodes. Those were so long. Those were like 2 years ago at this point. Do want to say it now though, if I didn't say it then. That night, I don't know if I ever told you this, Jeff. After you left, I went to walk Shepard to, he needed to go to the bathroom before I went to bed. I basically sprinted from streetlight to streetlight.
Yeah, I think you had told me about this. It's very funny.
I don't know how many times I've seen those movies.
Still get to you.
Until then, they still get to me. And that being said, supernatural horror like The Exorcist, which is why I chose The Exorcist. Plus, I want to talk about something about The Exorcist, the way it is made versus other supernatural horror, including Sinister, which I assume at some point, I haven't picked Sinister because I assumed you would pick it at some point.
I will be picking it at some point because I adore that movie. It's one of my favorite of the new kind of like regime of horror of the last few years.
Yeah, I've been waiting for you to kind of play that card, because it is worth talking about on this podcast, I think. But I basically sprinted from streetlight to streetlight. And all we did was watch The Thing and Alien, which are movies I have seen again and again and again. And it still got under my skin. You basically have
Alien memorized by now.
Oh, yeah. You and I both. You're the only other person I know that has Alien memorized the way that I have it memorized in my head. And you and I both, I have a very vivid memory of when that hand comes out near the end of the movie when she's on the escape pod. You and I both jumping at the same time, even though we knew it was coming.
It's just so good. It's so well done.
It's so well done. We knew it was coming. We both jumped still at the same time. I remember seeing you in my peripheral vision jumping at the same time I did. And that movie still doesn't get under my skin the way supernatural horror does. But there's a reason I wanted to pick The Exorcist and wanted to talk about it that we would get into when we actually get into the thing. But yeah, I just wanted to know kind of how you felt about supernatural horror in general, just because it affects me in a special way in a almost feral way that I can't explain. Because while at the same time I had a religious upbringing, I didn't. Because again, saying I had a religious upbringing infers something about my parents. And my parents are both raised Assembly of God by their parents. And the churches they went to were Baptist, both known for being very strict, both kind of uptight versions of the same thing. But the schools that I went to were kind of non-denominational, which are, for people that aren't familiar, are kind of open to anything. Whatever your beliefs are, as long as you're reading the Bible, you're believing in God. I don't want to say it doesn't count against you. That's the first thing that came to mind, but that's not necessarily true because I don't look at it that way. But a denomination is like Assembly of God, Baptist. Non-denominational is kind of anything goes, right? You're in the club as long as you're doing the thing. You're reading the Bible, you believe, you're in the club. And the schools I went to were non-denominational because, wouldn't you know it, that gets the most students. Which means you get the most tuition, right? So,
Yeah. So I went to public school, which is basically us, performing pagan rituals every day and sacrificing livestock, before weightlifting class.
Right.
Yeah.
Before weightlifting class, that explains why you look the way you do lately. The last few times I've seen you, you're pretty square-shouldered, pretty tight looking in those t-shirts when you come over lately.
Oh, thanks, dude.
Does that have anything to do with the fact that you have a girlfriend, or?
I can neither confirm nor deny.
You're not hitting that exercise bike extra hard?
I have been, dude. My fucking exercise routine is such like a fucking. I will go through a couple of months of being real good and a couple months of being real bad. Lots of Taco Bell.
And then as the guilt piles up, you hit the bike again.
We're in like a good phase right now where I've kind of like cut out fast food for the most part. I've been exercising a lot, but just at any point, especially with it being like Halloween season, I can see like a whole fucking day of just like candy corn and fucking Taco Bell, man. Just something bad.
You're sprinkling candy corn on top of your taco.
Yeah, I mean, you're not really living unless you've had a candy corn chalupa.
Oh man.
And the thought of that makes you want to vomit green ooze like freaking. But yeah, did you have anything else, or do you want to hop into the movie?
No, let's get into it. I picked this movie for a reason, man.
Okay, well, do you want to? Okay, first of all, spoilers for The Exorcist.
Absolutely.
Almost in its 50th anniversary. Next year is its 50th anniversary, which is correct for the extent that this movie both holds up and feels so far. I think it's because it's so far ahead of its time that, to me, The Exorcist will like never go out of style. It will never feel like it's a thing of the past, because I think for the time it's so fucking brazen. It's so bold that it just feels like they don't have fucking anything candy coated in The Exorcist. It is just brutal and so bold, and it's so in your face at the same time. And I've seen it multiple times. I'm always just taken aback by a few of the scenes and how just fucked up they are.
I forgot how fucked up this movie can be, and I knew it was fucked up going back into it.
Yeah, if you forget certain scenes, especially ones that involve crucifixes, they will fuck you up, man. They will fuck you up. So yeah, Exorcist, not for the faint of heart.
No,
and the
not
fact
at
that this
all.
movie came out in 1973 blows my mind, because there is some shit in here. We have progressed very, very far in the last 49 years as far as like pop culture and what is socially acceptable to be in like this movie made $440 million at the box office in fucking 1973.
That's 1973 money.
Yeah, in modern money, that's like $1 bajillion, bro.
That's Avengers level, right?
That's the equivalent of like almost $1 billion movie. You know, that's insane for what is an incredibly disturbing horror movie. And it just shows you how much it is a phenomenon, because it was just so brutal and so fucking brazen that it became just like probably like the ultimate word of mouth movie, where people would be like talking to their friends like, you cannot believe what is in this film. And even people who are watching it 50 years later, if you watch this for the first time this year, you'd be like, this movie was released in 73? Are you fucking kidding me? How'd they get it into theaters the way it is?
Did you say 473,000 roundabouts?
It's in the 400 million mark. I looked earlier. I don't know the exact number, but it was above 400 million for 1972.
Okay, now, granted, this has been out since 1973. 473,000. I don't know. According to inflationtool.com, this is
441 million. 441 million is the Wikipedia total.
That's for 1973, or is that to current?
That is for 1973. That's what's listed as the box office.
It was 441 million?
Yeah.
That can't be right. That can't be right, because according to inflation, according to inflation, that's $3 trillion. That can't be. That can't be right.
Okay, let's see. Box office mode. This is a gripping podcast.
It's gripping podcast.
The Exorcist. Let's see. No, don't recommend me the box office mojo for the Eternals. I don't want to know how much fucking money the Eternals unfortunately made. Let's see. The Exorcist on box office mojo. Worldwide, 441 million. I don't think Box Office Mojo is accounting for inflation. So
that might be accounting, but they might be accounting from then to today. I don't know. According to Google, that's about $6.67 on the dollar. $1 in 1973 was $6 today. Let's see.
The Exorcist box office adjusted for inflation.
We should have done this before. I'm sorry.
It's all good. It's all good.
It's all content.
Adjusted for today's pricing, it would have made about $1 billion based on an article.
Which is what Frozen 2 made, for context.
Yeah.
In 2019.
Yeah. Which is astronomical for
That's
just the type of movie this
is.
Yeah, it's fucking crazy.
Like, we cannot stress enough how insane this movie was, and like you said, it was ahead of its time, but in multiple ways. Like, When you watch this movie, Jeff, other than the look of it and the hairstyles and the clothing and the way the filming looked, did it feel like you're watching a movie from 1973?
No,
It felt like a movie from like 2016, right? Like it didn't.
yeah, it feels, and part of that, so it's weird. So The Exorcist is so influential that it became like the starting point for the tone of these types of horror movies.
So that's
So,
one,
like,
that's one
the
reason
reason
why
that
I picked it. That's one reason why I picked it.
Yeah.
I wanted to say, if you watch any demon possession movie, I feel like most of them these days, not all of them, but I feel like most of them. We talked about this in the Prey episode, how the Predator franchise got all the wrong lessons from the first Predator movie. I feel like a lot of demon possession type movies and exorcist type movies got the wrong lessons from this movie. This movie is different than you expect it to be if you've seen any other demon possession movie. This movie is almost a detective movie. It's almost a noir movie. It's almost a cop movie. The way the Catholic priests move about it, it's almost a police or detective type thriller than what you expect from a demon possession movie.
Yep.
It's even the portrayal. Could you imagine in 1973 portraying a Catholic priest the way they do in this movie?
Yeah. It had to have just sent some religious groups into absolute fucking ballistic turmoil over the fact that, like, the church, like, even the protagonist, as far as, like, Father Karras, being agnostic himself.
Yeah, him. Okay.
Is,
so you expect the stereotype of a priest losing his faith is the chain-smoking, alcohol-drinking priest. I feel like this movie almost invented that trope. And
this movie invented a lot of tropes.
It really
just because
did.
it's like the most, even outside of demonic possession movies, this is probably the most influential horror movie because it just, like, that kind of, like, oppressive atmosphere of just, like, the constant dread, even when something scary isn't specifically happening, like, just the constant feeling of something bad is about to happen, which is just dreaded in its entirety. And a lot, especially the modern, like, Blumhouse styles of movies, something like Sinister, Exorcism of Emily Rose, just films like that, where even if it's not about specifically demonic possession, I feel like the tone of The Exorcist is omnipresent, fucking all over the place for good reason, because good God, is The Exorcist, like, still, like, are you also, every time you watch it, taken aback by just how good it is? It's like, so somehow I, like, forget how good it is until I go back and rewatch it, and it's just, like, so engaging that I'm just like,
yeah,
I
always
so
remember
crazy.
it as a great movie in its own right. But it's not until I go and watch it again that I remember just how good it is.
Yeah, it is gripping stuff.
Yeah.
So let's run through the cast and crew before we go into specifics. Okay, so let's talk about...
we have a format here. Let me take another drink of my whiskey.
Yeah, So the director is William Friedkin. You want to talk about... I think we talked about recently...
Friedkin, man.
We talked about recently, how, like, McTiernan had, like, that just absolutely absurd run of directing between, like, what was it? The Predator and fucking Die Hard,
Right.
William Friedkin's movie right before the fucking Exorcist was The French Connection. back to back Best Picture nominees, and he I actually don't know if Exorcist was, but he did get Best Directing nominations for each of those, and one for The French Connection. So
can I confess
crazy.
something?
What?
I've never seen The French Connection. I know.
You have not seen
I know how legendary it is. I know why it's legendary. I know all about it except for, like, plot details.
Yeah.
I know references to it. Movies make references to it all the time, even some of them by name. I've never actually seen it.
I saw it so long ago that I have also forgotten most of, like, the specific. Like, when you watch a movie when you're kind of young and you're kind of, like, not old enough to, like, fully appreciate it.
Right.
I watched it when I was, I think, like, very, very like early preteen where I could, you know, like obviously watch it and enjoy it as a movie, but I don't really remember it that well and wasn't old enough to fully appreciate like what the fucking Exorcist is for horror. That's, you know, for crime thrillers as far as like car chases and shit.
You and I cannot understate to anyone listening to this what they know about horror. There are so many lessons that came about horror from this movie. If you watch The Exorcist, even things that are not supernatural, even movies that are not supernatural, take lessons from this movie. There's a reason, like I said, the reason I picked this movie, when you think of horror, one of the movies you should think of is The Exorcist.
Yeah,
I think this is in the title, Jeff. The is in the title. It has to be good.
Exactly, man. I would say this and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre are probably the two most influential horror movies.
Probably.
The Texas Chainsaw Massacre because it fucking invented the entirety of slasher. Like, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre basically invented the slasher movie and became the prototype for how many fucking franchises in the 80s and
all of
like
them.
Basically all of the, like Halloween, Jason, all fucking homages to the kind of format that Texas Chainsaw Massacre created. But this, I think, is the template for everything else that's not a slasher movie. Like the Exorcist, like, is the template, not just for demonic possession, but just that oppressive tone and that feeling of just being like overwhelmed by what is like the villain force in this movie, which we'll talk about. Like,
yeah. I don't want to say too much now because when we get past this and we get into the meat of the movie, I want to talk about certain things, but there's things about the tone and the risk that it took. We have talked about recently in other movies that I actually kind of wanted to call back to, that it even influenced a recent movie we covered that was brand new. You can see the influence of this movie on it.
Absolutely. So we talked about how directed by William Friedkin, absolute legend. The writer for this, who actually did the screenplay, William Peter Blatty, also wrote the novel. And if you haven't looked into some of the specifics about how the novel came about, it's interesting. So the book that it's based off of was written by Blatty while he was actually attending Georgetown. So that is why that is why the story is set in Georgetown.
Okay.
And he actually while he was at Georgetown, he heard about this like really famous exorcism case. That's, let's see, I'm pulling up the specifics of the actual book.
Shit like this is why I'm glad I did this podcast with you, Jeff.
To learn more random shit.
Because you were the type of person that when you read something, you're like, oh, that's interesting, and then you do a deep dive on it. And I have to admit, as much as I know about this movie, as much as I love it, I did not do as deep a dive as I should have before we got here. But I am drunk, if that helps.
That is, yeah, I'm... You're Pazuzu.
I am Pazuzu at this point.
Yeah. What's the brand of the whiskey?
Hibiki by Suntory.
So yeah. Instead of Pazuzu, you're Hibiki. You've been possessed by Hibiki, so you're it's all good.
It really does sound like a demon out of the Bible, doesn't it?
Right. So he was.
I am Hibiki. Bow before me.
Oh god.
Oh god. This is where we are now. If only more people would listen and rate and review, it wouldn't come to me drinking. But here I am drinking on the show.
A little alcohol never hurt anybody.
I'm not slurring as much as I think I am I? I still sound somewhat professional.
I mean, we never sound professional.
True.
So we don't have like a really high bar to clear. So I think you're golden, pony boy.
Can I say even drunk? Fuck IMDb for their dark mode still being mostly white on my like, I don't know, 450 to 700 nit screen, whatever the fuck my monitor is. Anyway.
Okay.
You were saying.
So William Peter Blatty was a student. He was part of the class of 1950 at Georgetown.
Okay.
So while he was attending classes there, the 1949 exorcism of Roland Doe. This is the case that kind of like made him fascinated about exorcists and just in general.
Okay, yeah, I had heard something about that. Not the detail you're probably about to go into, but I had heard a little bit about it.
Yeah, so the case, it's the exorcism of Roland Doe. It was a famous one that had gone around the United States in the late 40s.
You can't call yourself a movie buff without having at least heard the name of what you just said in relation to The Exorcist. I know about that much right there.
Yeah. So you'll start to see parallels between this and what became the story of The Exorcist. But The Exorcism of Roland Doe was about a 14-year-old boy who was the alleged victim of demonic possession. The events were recorded by the attending priest, Raymond J. Bishop. And
a
basically
little
like
on the
those
nose,
recordings.
okay.
Right. So
Raymond Bishop
a lot of
absolutely sounds like a made-up priest name. Go ahead.
the recordings of it, as far as like, him having multiple voices,
right?
That became a very, very common trope in demonic possession movies because it is typically a thing that is recorded with these famous, moments of possession that become cases that people are familiar with, like Roland Doe and stuff like that. So yeah, all the kind of like details of those claims that, some of it ended up being bullshit, because if you have a story like that go rampant in the news in the US back then, obviously it's word of mouth, and the fucking internet didn't exist back then. There wasn't exactly like a way for it to be specifically fact checked, just because of the way the world worked.
Right.
But yeah, the story surrounding this possession fuels so much of what becomes the plot of The Exorcist. And I think it's just like important to note that what like an amazing job, because writing a book and writing a screenplay are apples and oranges, and for him to adapt his own book and for it to not feel like like the pacing is bad, like one thing that's like a writing thing that's not often talked about, dialogue in a screenplay versus dialogue that can work in a book is very different.
Yes,
because your brain, when you're reading a book, can kind of like autocorrect dialogue. Your brain can kind of like fix what would be awkward to have a human actually say in a movie if you're reading it.
Not only that, can I add something to what you just said?
Yeah, absolutely.
Something you and I talk about a lot about H.P. Lovecraft. And the whole thing about how he writes is how, if you and I read the same story, I would imagine it differently than the way you imagined it. Because that's the way our brains work, right? That's the power of writing. You have that ability when you write something in text. But if you show me a movie, you and I watched the same movie, so we see things the same way. We might not interpret it the same way, but we saw the same thing. And that's not the way writing works. In writing, my lifetime experience comes to the front, and I read something differently than the way you read it. So can I quote another podcaster that you and I have both followed, Ralph Garman? Mm-hmm. His acting coach told him, he's said this many times on his podcast, said that the problem with people that like write and direct and star in their own thing is that people don't mind the smell of their own farts. That is what you were about to talk about, right? The ability to write your book and then adapt your own book into a screenplay in a different way. There is no one to tell you no. That is the moral of that story. There's no one around to tell you no, not to do this thing, not to say this thing, because to work across different mediums, Jeff, that's insane. To have the ability to work across two different mediums is a very rare skill. I did not know that. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're good.
I did not know. And it's also, I did not know that the same person that wrote the book was the person that adapted the screenplay until I watched it this time. That was the first time I noticed that detail in the credits of the movie. And that my head exploded, because to have that skill to transcend the medium is rare. Good writers are good writers. Good screenplay people are good screenplay people. That is two entirely different ways of thinking. That does not happen.
It's often why people are so like voracious about saying, "Oh, the movie's okay, but the book is better."
Right.
Because when you're reading a book, you bring yourself along for the ride, and the way that your brain works, you're like creating like a little mental picture, like a little movie in your head as you're reading a book.
Exactly.
And it's like to your point where it's like no one ever reads the same book the same way because you're bringing so much of yourself along for the ride because you are it's kind of like when you read a comic and your brain can kind of like transform the comic into a story that is combining these elements of like pictures as well as words, and it becomes this like, and like when you combine all the different elements, it becomes this moving story that is happening in your brain and is happening different for everyone that it experiences it.
Comics are weird because they're almost a storyboard and your brain kind of fills in the gaps, but because you are not me, I read the same comic differently than you do, even though it's a visual medium as well as a literal medium, literal as in literature. It's a weird in-between state, right? You and I saw the same frames, but what's in between those frames is different because our brain filled in the gap. You are not me and I am not you.
It's just interesting. And
this is getting into some weird psychological shit I did not foresee.
And what's interesting too is like that almost like never fucking happens now.
Yeah,
that could not happen now because what would happen is what happens with okay, so like, here's an instance, The Martian.
Yeah, we just talked about that in the green room.
Yeah, when you're talking about that in the green room, so the screenplay was adapted by Drew Goddard, and
love him.
That would be the equivalent of Andy Weir, who had written the Martian novel, being
also
it would have been like a big kind of crazy news story if Andy Weir were to be also writing the screenplay and adapting it into film because they are such apples and oranges. And I just think like for that to cross over as well as it does by the same guy is crazy because you can often have like some very, very stilted, just kind of bizarre writing because it's such a like if you just like look at like especially if you just look at like the page counts. If you look at the page counts of what is a feature-length movie and a script, it's nothing compared to what like a 400-page novel consists of. Because like with writing a novel, it is so much more of like a world building technique as far as really letting the person kind of sink into it. It's not as like face value as like a screenplay has to be, because like a screenplay that you can't have like a single wasted word. Like you have time to kind of like meander in a novel and kind of let the reader really sink into it. But with like screenplay writers, like they're taught, and they specifically are learning to cut every single line of dialogue if it isn't either advancing plot or advancing character. And that's exactly what the Exorcist movie does. Is there's very, very little wasted time. Like everything is for a purpose.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but if I can expand on what you just said, people that might not know, in a novel, you're kind of covering all the bases and filling in all the gaps. But in a screenplay, for something that's intended to be a movie, well, the rule of thumb I've always heard is that every page is a minute that's on screen. And there's a lot of gaps in what happens between dialogue, and everything in between dialogue is like asterisk, he goes over to the bar, asterisk. Like, it's very vague. It's a very different style of writing than what you're used to if you read a lot of books.
It's very obtuse.
It's very obtuse is a good way to say it.
It'll say like exterior diner, car chase ensues.
Exactly.
Boom, done. Boom. That could be like a 5-minute chase, like a 5-minute car chase in movie time is a single line of text in a script. It's crazy. Like, and it also varies from person to person as far as like what director you're working with, because some writers, like especially writers that will work with like a certain director a lot, and they know like the director is going to end up having this one specific thing that is like their thing. They know like they're going to really love like beefing up the car chase. I'm not going to explain a single thing because I know the director is basically going to be the writer for a moment in time and staging this whole, and like the storyboarders too will end up taking this thing, kind of like rolling with it and turning like what is just a single line of text into 5 to 10 minutes of movie. Apples and oranges.
It's a very different style of writing than what you would imagine, and it's it leaves a lot open to interpretation because that is not the point of a screenplay, whereas that is the point of a novel. A novel is trying to paint a picture. A screenplay is, I don't want to say it's an outline because that's kind of dismissive, but it is cliff notes of a movie. It's the dialogue is there, but everything in between is kind of just like asterisk, blah, asterisk, and your director and your DP kind of fills in the gaps, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's worth mentioning because, again, the idea that the guy that wrote the book is the guy that wrote the screenplay, absolutely incredible.
Yeah, it's an interesting detail to just kind of like think back on of how different a time it was, because that would not happen nowadays.
Would not happen. I mean, the closest you get is Michael Crichton, but still, my God.
Yeah. So let's run through the cast. So Ellen Burstyn.
We haven't gotten through it yet, have we?
Yeah, we've barely got into it.
I'm sorry. I'm drunk and I am destroying the flow of this podcast.
Oh no, it's all good. We had a pretty big opening as far as like talking other topics.
I meant to get a buzz and then maintain the buzz. I have reached full blown drunk, and I apologize.
Okay, you're probably gonna completely have forgotten what all was talked about in this podcast. You probably have to listen to it again.
I don't even know what we've said so far. So that's where.
Okay,
I am.
let's run through the cast.
Yeah,
okay,
you go through it. I'll take another drink.
Okay, Ellen Burstyn is Chris McNeil. She is a famous actress. And the only reason I could think of making her a famous actress is the only person in this point in time that could afford the amount of fucking doctors that this kid ends up seeing.
Oh my God.
Is an A-lister actress. Because thinking of the fucking medical bills of this movie will give you a heart attack.
Like, what insurance carrier does she have?
Yeah, it's crazy.
In America in 1973. Our medical system is a whole other podcast in 2022.
Yeah. Which me and Ron are not qualified enough to talk about.
Oh, so my God.
We will leave that to the experts. Max von Sydow plays Father Lancaster Marin.
I almost hate to say this, but at the same time, a great role. Most people listening to this right now know him best from Game of Thrones.
Max von Sydow? Yeah,
yes.
He plays the original Three-Eyed Raven.
Exactly.
There you go. There you go. Lee J. Cobb.
Yeah, we went.
One of my favorite parts of the supporting cast is Lee J. Cobb as the lieutenant going around and interrogating people. I really like his character.
Can I say why I like his character?
Yeah.
He is a serious Clouseau.
I was also getting major Clouseau vibes from him while I was watching it.
He's almost the blueprint. If you take Inspector Clouseau from the Pink Panther movies, for those that don't know, because again, you and I are that old. If you take Inspector Clouseau and make him a serious character, you get Lieutenant William Kinderman.
He's awesome. I love him.
Dude, when he's asking for her autograph, like, oh my God, you're so Clouseau. This is beyond Clouseau.
He almost feels like a detective that like Ryan Johnson would have written if he was a writer in like the 70s. He just has that kind of like charm to him that that is really, really great.
What I thought about it as I was thinking about it before we started recording, for 1973, he's almost a statement on the idea of a detective or a policeman, right? Everyone knows the 1960s and, Flower Children and all that. 1970s movies tend to take a side, quote unquote. They almost tend to try to make a political statement, however subtle. It's almost like Lieutenant Kinderman is a statement in the 1970s of what people thought of as the police or the detective, without making a mockery of him, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get you.
Because he's not bumbling his way through. He is right. If you think about the movie, take away the supernatural belief, take away what you know as the audience member, he's not wrong about what's happening.
Yeah, he's actually right on the money as far as taking a look at the evidence and what the evidence points to had to have happened based on what happened. and like based on the details of the case.
Exactly.
But he's going around and he's like going through the motions of investigating, even though he knows he won't be able to get to the bottom of it, because what makes sense can't be possible. So he's like really struggling with like the idea of, I have to investigate this case, but I know there's not a concrete answer that I can find. Deep down he just knows.
What I'm about to say comes from a lot of stuff coming to the front of pop culture now, like between John Oliver and various podcasts and various other documentaries. He is kind of relevant in today's terms, even in the fact, like John Oliver, for instance, did a piece recently on how not just the public, but the police force themselves are informed by NYPD Blue and various TV shows, which is terrifying to think about in America. That the person arresting you and maybe the lawyer prosecuting you knows what they know from NYPD Blue.
Yeah.
Or like all the way back to Dragnet, which is almost worth covering on this show, by the way, if you know the history of Dragnet. He's almost a statement in the way that most 1970s movies make about various government entities and government powers and all that. That's a very common theme that runs through 1970s media, not just movies, but TV as well. But while at the same time, he's not making fun of it. Like we said, he's right on the money. What he's saying makes sense. What he knows what's going on, but he doesn't have the evidence to say this child murdered this person, right?
Yeah. Because it's not physically possible.
It's not possible.
Yeah.
But But the scene when he's looking at her window and you see her like float past out of screen. Like, holy shit, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting too. So Jason Miller plays Father Karras. This was his first acting role.
Insane.
I think he's fantastic in this. And this was his first film. That's wild to me.
Maybe his best role. I don't know. Insane. Absolutely insane.
Yeah. Absolutely crazy. They were very, very specific with the casting as far as like kind of like letting people have a chance. Because I noticed one thing I noticed as I was just browsing around the cast. So Karras' mother, the actress, her name is Vasiliki Malarios.
Have you seen her IMDb photo?
Yeah, this was her only film role, and she actually passed away. She passed away the year the movie came out. So,
oh my god,
it's fucking crazy. Like they specifically like they saw people and then just realized these people, regardless of their backgrounds, regardless of if they've ever acted before, these are the people they want, because they just like this movie has like such a vision to it. You have to like just fucking commend the absolute just. Like, this was a pretty, ended up being like a cultural phenomenon, and you have a lot of people, this were like first time actors. Like fucking nuts.
I picked this movie because of what it is and what it means to horror and even sci-fi. But to learn what I have learned in the course of watching this and preparing for this podcast about like a lot of the, like you said, the first time actors, and the guy that wrote the book is the guy that wrote the screenplay. My God.
Just another just crazy fact.
Yeah.
So that actress that had played the mom.
So good.
So this was her only role. She's really good in it. At the time of the movie, she was 89 years old. She was born, Ron, in 1883.
Oh my God.
Isn't that just crazy to think of?
The railroad was the most advanced technology she knew when she was born. And
she ended up being in one of the most famous and influential movies of all time.
Past the space age.
Yeah. It's awesome.
Can I say
like
something about her? Go ahead. Did you get, was it 2002 Spider-Man vibes? The first Toby.
Rosemary Harris, the actress who is. Yes. I think that's her name. Who's Aunt May.
Yeah. Did you get Aunt May vibes from her?
A little bit. I didn't get it well as I was watching it, but now that you mention it, like I totally get that.
Yeah. That's kind of what I got this watch through.
Yeah. And the last of the primary cast that we'll talk about is Linda Blair, as Reagan McNeil.
Dude.
One of the best kid performances of all time. She is amazing. And some of her facial expressions
are
just fucking haunting, dude. She's like a 12-year-old girl in this movie, and she is terrifying. Just some of her facial expressions, the way that I always feel like there are like little subtle differences based on which voice is coming out.
Yes.
In a given scene, she almost seems to have like more intense or more relaxed facial expressions, and I that has to have been like a directing thing, I would bet. But still, like, she nails every scene of this.
Like, there are parts of this movie where obviously, I don't know if she's mouthing the words. I don't know what she's doing while someone else is recording the vocal stylings of. It does not work without Linda Blair being who she is.
Yeah, she sells it all.
Amazing performance.
Amazing performance. Just absolutely like next level stuff.
Incredible.
Yeah. So that's the kind of like primary crew and cast. Do you want to go ahead and start running through like I think you had talked about earlier there was a specific reason why you had picked the movie that you wanted to talk about once we got into more specifics of it. Did you want to go ahead and talk about that? No.
I feel like this movie is the blueprint, like I said, for a lot of sci-fi, a lot of supernatural horror, a lot of what you know, not even just like exorcism style movies, but I feel like there's a lot of this movie in Sinister, for example. But at the same time, this movie, while Sinister is a good example of lessons learned from The Exorcist, I feel like Predator, there's a lot of wrong lessons learned. This movie, Jeff, I forgot until I watched it for this episode how long it takes to get to the meat of the episode, how it takes its time. It is filmed and written more like a noir or more like a detective novel than it is. And what I wanted to mention, when we covered Prey, we talked about how Prey had the balls to just sit there and linger on scenes where nothing happens, or linger on the background where nothing happens. One of the most famous music themes of all time is The Exorcist. Would you agree?
Yeah, especially not even in just horror, but one of the most like iconic themes, and it's only used like 2 or 3 times in the movie too.
And the first time you hear it is a lady walking down the street.
Mm-hmm.
Very similar to Prey, where they lingered on scenes. One of the most iconic themes in movie history happens. Just a woman just walking down the street. Nothing eventful happens.
Because I think one thing too that like The Exorcist like nails that also became like a blueprint is if you can successfully convey the like sense of dread in the movie overall, even in sequences where nothing is really happening, where you just always feel that kind of lurching feeling in your stomach, like something bad is going to happen. Like if you can keep that sense of dread happening, even if something specifically scary isn't happening on screen, I think you have like a real kind of like nail biter of a movie where you're just fully engaged like the entire time.
Yeah.
And I think it does it just beautifully, because like you said, there's not a lot. There are moments where you see them like hinting at the supernatural phenomena that's going to happen with the demon and with Reagan, but not a lot happens until about
halfway through, 3/4 of the way through.
Yeah, it's about, I think it's probably like halfway through, probably like an hour into the movie once the possession kind of like fully kicks in, and she's having like the different voices. Shit is happening with
I can tell you this much. If I'm trying to go to sleep in my house and I hear what sounds like a goddamn facehugger running through the attic, I'm leaving. I might even just leave the country, not just the house.
I love the bit with like the butler guy too, where he's just like, there's no rats, dude.
Can we talk about the director just full on following the butler around the house like you goddamn Nazi. What is happening?
It's really fucked up.
But and you're on the butler, at least in 2022 eyes, you're on the butler side strangling that director.
Yeah. Burke.
But this movie, my God, Jeff, the way it takes its time, and this is a weird thing to say, but the fact that it has the balls to spend half of the movie, upwards of 2/3 of the movie, just taking its sweet time, because it's called The Exorcist. You knew going into the movie in 1973 what was going to happen, because the name of the movie is The Exorcist. The fact that it took its time to build up what it did, to expand on the mom in a way that is meaningful yet not boring, right? It is additive to the plot. The way that the beginning, the Iraq scene, when I said I wanted to cover this movie for the podcast last episode, I forgot about the first, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes to this movie.
Yeah, it's basically a prologue. It's basically a prologue. Yeah. And it's the same prologue that is in the novel about Max von Sydow's character. There is apparently, from what I was reading, more specifics, obviously because it's a book and you can have more specifics, because the movie makes the opening preamble kind of more elemental. Right. And like there's very little dialogue. It's mostly just establishing shots and shots of Max von Sydow being a fucking amazing actor, you know, because he conveys so much of like the impending dread just on his face. Can we just say we lost him in 2020, and I am still in a way feeling that loss watching this movie. Yeah, he was amazing.
He was incredible as Father. And okay, Father Merrin being the blueprint for every supernatural horror movie. He's basically the Van Helsing of this movie. This movie is made more like a Dracula film than it is a demon possession film. Would you agree? You have the thing happening, things are happening to innocent people around them, and then we call in the Van Helsing like character to help. It's almost more like a Dracula film with him being Van Helsing and the demon being Dracula than anything. Because the things that happen with Linda Blair as Reagan, it almost focuses more on the effect that it has on the mother than the effect that it has on Reagan. Even though we see profound effects on Reagan, the movie seems to follow her mom around more than anything.
I think she's a really, really smart choice to be the kind of like stand-in for the point, like the point of view for the audience, because she like another like a kind of ongoing tone throughout the movie and like sensibility to it is like hopelessness,
right?
And you cannot think of like a more hopeless position to be in.
As a parent,
she is doing every single thing in her power to help her kid, and nothing is working.
Let me tell you,
she goes through how many fucking different doctors?
I think she says 88. Hard to watch. I think she says 88 in the movie.
You want to talk about too, like how the hopelessness of just seeing her undergoing the medical observation test, knowing that you know that it's worthless. Seeing some of like the shit they have to do as far as like checking her spinal fluid, what they're doing with like doing x-rays of her brain, and knowing deep down as like the audience that it's all worthless because it's demonic possession is really heartbreaking. And it like really, really adds to that sense of just like absolute fucking hopelessness and helplessness, you know, where she's doing everything she can. And like she goes to the exorcism like idea as just a fucking like in case of emergency break glass and call the exorcist type of shit. Right. It is like the absolute like last thing that she has to fall back on. It's not even something that she fully believes in. She is just trying every single thing she can possibly think of to help her kid, and I think it makes her like a very endearing and realistic mom.
I was gonna say, as a parent myself, this movie played differently for me than it has in the past, because this is the first time I've watched it as a parent. And
were you kind of like putting yourself in her shoes as far as just how awful that would be?
Well, here's the thing. As a parent, you go through things that you know are good, that you know are helpful, that the child does not understand, right? Your child might see things as, this hurts, I don't want to do it, or whatever. And when you see the medical test she's doing and all these things that she's doing, my God, one of the worst things I ever went through was just when my kids were like a couple of months old drawing blood. And the fact that two nurses had to hold them down and hold their arm, I say they because for those that don't know, I have twins, held their arm out as they tried to tap a vein, and the way that a couple of months old child will scream as they're just drawing blood. Going through, I was brought to tears watching that, but I had to just sit back and watch because I knew it was just a blood test.
It's for the greater good.
It was
for
just
the greater
a blood
good.
test, Jeff.
Yeah.
Like, going through that and then watching this, my kids are now almost 6 years old, and watching this movie, like, what would I do if my child was going through just this random onslaught of bullshit that is happening to Linda Blair in this movie? Like, my God, the moment when they're tapping into her neck and you see the pulse with her heart rate and the blood shooting across.
Dude, and they linger on showing it all. And it works. It's so effective, too. And then they immediately cut over.
I'm sorry not to interrupt you, but they don't not only linger on the special effects of that moment, they cut to the mom and her reaction to watching it. And a thing that used to be a thing, I might point out, you don't get to watch surgeries now. That used to be a thing, the observation window of her watching this happen to her child. Holy shit, man.
Yeah, it's fucked up even outside of, like the later sequences of the possession and everything.
Yeah.
It's just like thinking of the fucking trauma that the entire family is undergoing.
You and I have often talked about on this show how different like The Thing would be if the movie didn't open with the spaceship crashing in Antarctica. Whereas this movie, it's an additive thing, right? You and I know it's demonic possession, but no one else in the movie does. And watching all this stuff happen and knowing what we know as the audience, it's an additive experience. Whereas The Thing, I don't want to say it's subtractive because of what The Thing is and what it represents for movies and movie history. But you and I have talked about how different that movie is if you don't open with the goddamn spaceship.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's subtractive either when in The Thing.
Yeah,
it's
I don't
just
know.
Not
I
necessary.
don't have the words to say.
It's just unnecessary.
Exactly.
It just doesn't make it. But like I agree. I do think both the combination of the prologue and the name of the movie.
You and I know it is literal demon possession.
Yeah.
But the characters, this is a rare occurrence of a horror movie where the characters are acting the way you expect them to react. It can't be demon possession. That's fairy tale. But you and I also know that it is, in fact, demon possession.
I also think you were talking a bit about like the slow burn aspect of this.
I think it serves a purpose. It serves a very.
I think it is incredibly useful, specifically showing a lot of scenes of Reagan with her mom and seeing Linda Blair just as a normal kid,
right?
And how sweet she is,
and the slow turn that she takes.
And adding like adding the juxtaposition of just how like sweet a kid she is versus what she ends up being in those possession scenes are fucking amazing.
Oh my God.
Just like I almost don't know where to begin just with the Exorcist stuff,
dude.
But so were those the points that you were wanting to make though that you had alluded to earlier? I just want to make sure you had time to talk about the points that you had
points I wanted to make out is I think that this movie is mastercraft in script writing. Granted, I don't myself know much about script writing, but what I know, and being an audience member in so many movies throughout my life and feeling like I can do a podcast on how movies are made, this movie has the balls to take the time that it has with not just Father Marin, right, but Damien, right, Father Karras, going through the mom and Reagan and even fucking Lieutenant Kenderman, just the time that it takes to slowly build up to the thing that it builds up to, so that when we get to the point where we're doing the actual exorcism, and, you know, the most famous scene in this movie, probably, the power of Christ compels you again and again and again. Even the 20-second bunnies. What was the thing that Stars eventually bought? The little flash animations that did horror movie after horror movie, and the two little rabbits going, "The power of Christ compels you. The power of Christ compels you," and the high pitched voices and stuff. All of that stuff. Like, you mentioned the Exorcism of Emily Rose, which is interesting because I was going to mention the Exorcism of Emily Rose, because I saw that in theaters with a friend of mine that I worked with at the time. After you've seen The Exorcist, and like I said, every movie takes the wrong lessons from this movie, but that doesn't make them bad movies. But they're just kind of a redo of The Exorcist with more shocking. This movie was very shocking. We cannot understate how shocking this movie was in 1973.
I still think it's shocking to today.
It's shocking today in 2022.
There's a couple of specific lines that are just like, did she just say what I think she said? Oh, she did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, but it feels like most exorcism movies these days took that lesson. It's like, how can we be more shocking? How can we freak out the audience more? But anymore, like, there's a lot of stuff in The Exorcist of Emily Rose, while a good movie, and I like the casting in that movie, because it's fucking Tom Wilkinson. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I love me some Tom Wilkinson.
Tom Wilkinson makes any movie better just by being in it.
I actually think The Exorcism of Emily Rose is interesting to talk about because
it might be a good one to cover. It might be a good one to cover on this show.
Well, what's interesting, if you didn't know, that's actually Scott Derrickson who directed Sinister.
I saw that.
Yeah, it's one of his earlier movies. I think that movie is interesting in adding on the element of, like, making it like a legal procedure alongside the supernatural aspect of it. And I think the combination of a demonic possession movie combined with what is, you know, like basically like a legal drama is interesting. As far as like putting yourself in the mindset of defense attorneys who are in these weird cases where shit just is fucking unexplainable. Yeah, and like how you wrap your mind around like defending someone in a weird situation like that.
There's a weird wrap up in The Exorcist that happens where everything's just kind of okay after the events of the movie, that The Exorcism of Emily Rose kind of touches on better than I think The Exorcist does. Which I don't know. I've never read the book. That might be expanded on in the book. I don't know.
I would actually really like to read the book.
Yeah, I can only judge the movie on what I saw. But
I plan to at some point read the book and just kind of like see like the differences in it, because there's obviously going to be a lot more detail, specifically in the opening. They actually apparently in the opening of the book go into more detail
about Pazuzu,
about his prior encounter with Pazuzu. Talked about in more detail.
That is mentioned in passing, and that is a very generous way to say it.
Yeah, it's by two non-main characters. Like there's just two rando dudes in the church talking up what's Max von Sydow's
I was gonna
character.
say one of the dudes in the church, I am scrambling. I've been scrambling for a few minutes to find his name on IMDb, but one of the two guys in the church is a character actor in a shit ton of movies that when I saw him again, I was like, oh my God, it's you. And I cannot find his name for the life of me. He's the guy that suggests Father Marin. He's got I mean, I don't mean to sound mean, but he's got kind of the pockmarked face. He's used in a lot of horror movies because of the way he looks. But he's a really good actor. He's in a ton of stuff. I
don't specifically know which guy you're talking about, but I totally believe you.
But yeah, he's the guy that suggests Father Marin, and the other guy's like, isn't he old? And he's like, yeah, but you know, he has experience. No one else
they really
does.
they have a lot of makeup on Max von Sydow too to make him look as old as possible because he's actually only 44 at the time of filming this.
Oh my god.
And they have him looking like he's in his late 70s at the earliest.
I swear to God, he has been an old guy in every movie he's been in.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's not true, but it feels like every movie he's ever been in, they have him cast as an old guy.
They also, like, the fucking dude was just, he was kind of like Christopher Lee in that he just kept fucking working, you know,
Yeah.
even into his, like, 80s and shit. Like,
But did he
just
have
kept
a
working.
death metal band?
That I cannot confirm. Hey, his
Lee
name
did.
sounds like he'd be the leader and front man of a death metal a fucking band with Max von Sydow.
Anyone that has the Vaughn in their name can do whatever the fuck they like. I'm sorry.
Right?
That's just metal in its own.
It's
And
metal,
Max
yeah.
von Sydow?
You sound like a fucking 1800s vampire in a castle when you
Dude.
have Vaughn in
Ma-
the middle of your name.
Max Sydow goes nowhere in life. Max von Sydow, though, fucking owns anything he does.
So, actual Bond villain name.
Actual Bond villain name.
Yeah. Craziness.
But I feel like I've done a lot of talking here. What was your takeaway? What was a lot of your big bullet points? Because I feel like I've eaten up a lot of time on this podcast.
Oh no, you're good. You're good. So the main thing that throws me off every single time I watch this, and not like throws me off in a negative way, but just like takes me aback,
right,
is how gratuitous the possession scenes are, but
Holy
not in
shit.
like a not in like a negative way, in a way to just like really like illustrate how fucking just like disgusting and fucked up this demon is. The crucifix scene, and just some of the lines of dialogue that you hear in this movie. Let Jesus fuck you.
Oh,
And
my
you're
God.
just like, did she just say what I think she said? And you are I cannot imagine, Ron.
Whether you're a believer or not,
being-
does that not make you cringe?
It does, and I cannot fathom being one of those people, Ron, in a theater in 1973, having not seen the movie yet.
Right?
Like, there had to have been some people just like straight up walking out of the theater that were just expecting to sit in on a horror movie and not realize they were sitting in on like a what would become like one of the biggest hits of like pop culture, like one of the most like pivotal moments of pop culture ever.
Oh my God.
Like, the movie just gives zero fucks. That you hear just some of the most like barbaric
the
shit
fact
out of her
that
mouth.
this movie made what it did is insanity
crazy.
given
Yeah.
pop culture and social values at the time.
Also, just side note, one thing we often don't talk about is posters, and I think the Exorcist might have like the most iconic poster. It is so
One
good.
of
It's so
the most iconic
it's so
posters.
simple.
To the
it's
to
so
the fact
fucking
that when
wonderful.
you watch it in 2022 and you see him get out of the taxi, you're like, oh my God, it's the thing. Every time you're like, oh my God, it's the thing for the poster.
It's just
It's
so
so cool.
simple too. It's so simple and yet so elegant, and it's just like, what a fucking chef's kiss of a poster, dude.
Do you
Because like if you saw that hanging in a theater
Oh,
back then and
man.
didn't know what it was, you know it would just immediately catch your attention. Just like absolute work of genius, and it's so fucking simple, and I love shit like that where it's just, man, is that it's just so encapsulating of so much in such like so much in such little detail. It's just a
16th?
dude standing.
Would you say 16th?
Yeah, just a dude standing outside of a fucking building, and it is so fucking elegant, man. I don't even, like, I can't even. We could have an entire podcast just fucking psychoanalyzing what that fucking poster is, like what it conveys, in just a dude standing outside of a building, and I just absolutely fucking love it.
An interesting topic. An interesting topic,
that.
if we ever did a topic-based podcast, would be just movie posters in general.
Yeah,
Because The Exorcist is one of the absolute best movie themes, movie posters of all time. And what it makes me think of, what do you think this movie is like in black and white? Because
you want that Fury Road
Yeah, 'cause
version where you get it in black and white? Yeah,
the poster's black and white, right? Whereas in the movie we have a tinge of color. He arrives at night, the light is there, but we see the moment in the movie, but it's colorized. Whereas it's straight up black and white, not monochrome, but black and white, right?
The adjective I was trying to think of is striking. It is
Yes.
incredibly striking.
Incredibly.
And fuck, it's just absolute work of genius. And also how disappointed I am in the overall like commercialization of blockbuster movies, as far as these types of posters just don't fucking exist anymore.
Right.
Because all posters seem to care about now is how many fucking famous actors can we cram into the frame.
My
That is, like,
favorite
all of
is
them.
any meme involving the MCU, right?
Yeah, and they are.
And
now,
how they're
obviously
all looking, no matter what direction they're facing, they're all looking to one side of the poster.
they're so fucking asinine that they might as well just have the fucking logo of the film and that's it.
Now-
Because they're just fucking pointless.
Now, I will admit, I think a lot of those are still cool, but they're not as relevant as, say, The Exorcist or Alien
yeah.
or The Thing.
Yeah, they're not like what I think one of my favorite posters the last few years was that really cool Alien Covenant one that was just
Oh,
this,
man.
yeah, just the what was it, Run?
Yes,
And
they
there's a
just said
couple others.
Run was the tagline.
And you just saw like a little silhouette, like outline of the face of one of the xenomorphs, and it's just really cool. Just,
So
it's like they're hardly any of them, and I think like the word too I'm looking for is we could use more like minimalism in our posters.
Addition through subtraction.
Exactly. Like I don't give a shit. I don't need a fucking Photoshop collage of the actors. Like convey some fucking like tone through your fucking poster, man. Like
You and I have another interesting topic would be trailers, because you and I have talked about legendary trailers in the past, and what trailers like. A good one that I always go back to is The Rocketeer. You don't need to watch the movie if you watch the goddamn trailer for Rocketeer. I think even when I let you borrow, I think I had the DVD or something, I was like, when you're done, go to the special features, watch the trailer, and let me know what you think. And you're just like, what the fuck? Because there was no point watching the movie.
yeah. Well, one thing we could actually do on weeks that we don't have a question, we could just talk for a few minutes about like a prompt.
It's true.
We could totally do that. I don't know why we're just now thinking of that after 60 fucking episodes or whatever we've done of the show.
I really think this is episode 60. I think you're right.
But we can we can definitely think about that for next time. So let's talk some specifics as far as like scenes. Let's talk some more about the opening.
Oh my god, the opening.
Also, by the way, some of these sets have to be the same sets as the Raiders of the Lost Ark, right?
Right.
I swear to God, I've seen some of those like little shop areas in Raiders of the Lost. Like gotta be Raiders of the Lost Ark scenes, right? Gotta be some of those same sets. Like gotta be some of those same locations because they just look so similar. When they're digging, does it not make you think of those scenes in Raiders when they're trying to find the
Belloq's digging in the wrong place.
Yeah, when they're trying to find the snake pit spot? Does that not look exactly the same?
Pit spot. That's very dangerous. You go first. Oh my god.
Oh man.
Yeah.
It just totally was getting Raiders vibes like all over the place, especially after we just watched them a while back.
The only thing missing is the silhouette, right? Of Indy putting on the hat while people are digging.
Right. Yeah, they even have that kind of like it even opens on that scene focusing on like, oh, it's beautiful too. The very opening frame of like the sun and just how the colorization changes is really cool.
Right.
It's very simple. It just is changing like color filters on a sunset, but man, does it look good.
Very, very, very good.
Just some absolute fucking gorgeous shots in this. Just another shot that came to mind that I really, really like. How good is the framing of Max von Sydow and Father Karras when they're sitting next to the staircase banisters?
Oh my
and you
god!
You can see the other person through the banisters on the other side of the staircase.
It's so good.
Simple, but it's so fucking good. I just saw that and it was just like, man, this movie is a fucking work of art, man. It is just next fucking level shit, like left and right in every way.
This may seem weird, but one of my favorite shots is when they decide to call Father Merrin. And it cuts to the dude running the letter to him in the woods when he's just like casually strolling through the woods, I guess.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And you don't see his face even. You don't see anything about him. You just see him receive the letter, casually read it, fold it up and put it in his pocket. But it's done at such a distance and framed a certain way that it's like, oh my God, people have to be studying this in film school, right? Because I got everything I needed from that distant shot.
Do you not like also like feel the weight on his shoulders as he's like
There's
reading
something
like, the
about
news?
his posture after he reads the
Yeah.
letter and puts it in his pocket. There's something about his body language, something about his posture you pick up on.
Yeah, it feels like inherently deflating almost.
Yeah, and you and I have talked about in the past about say H.P. Lovecraft, right? Like, yeah, the guy was a shitbag, but again, addition through subtraction. The way he wrote, people that are not into his stuff say that it's just like, oh, here, you do the work, you imagine it. But the people that are into it, it's the scariest fucking shit. It's the scariest thing you can imagine because your brain fills in the gaps. It's just a guy in the woods reading a letter and putting it in his pocket. But something about his body language, something about the way Max von Sydow conveys that, fills in the gaps in your brain.
It's so good.
It's so good.
You feel like just like
that same style of writing, but in a visual medium. It's nuts.
Yeah. It just conveys that you just feel like it feels like devastating.
He just seems tired when he reads it. He just seems. They talk about, before we see that scene, they talk about how, what was it, a month or 3 months his last exorcism did, and it nearly killed him.
Yeah, because he's often seen throughout the movie having to take it's like heart pills, I believe, is what it's led to. What most people have kind of like drawn from it is he's taking like heart medication.
If he pilots another Jaeger, he'll die. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can find Max von Sydow in the drift run.
He'll always be in the drift.
He'll always be in the drift.
Yeah, it's just like you said, the weight is a good way to say it. The weight on his shoulders. It's just an old guy in the woods reading a paper.
That's like the kind of like next level shit in this movie. Is it'll be such a basic thing, and all of the weight of the world can be attributed to like any basic thing because of the fucking performances, because of like what shots they choose to linger on. It's just all fucking incredible. I also really like one of the creepier parts of the movie to me is how you always get the quick glimpses of the demon's face.
Yes.
But they're always just like one literal frame. And it's that like I forgot that was an element of the movie tonight, and that first time you see it's like a single frame of the demon's face, and it is when Father Karras is having dreams
right after his mom dies.
Right after his mom dies, and he's having like this like continuous nightmare, and they just insert one fucking frame of the demon face. And it's so unsettling because if you just look at the demon face like as a still, it's not that scary.
But that quick
when you insert a demon's face for one single frame,
your brain doesn't get the detail, but it fills in the gaps.
Yeah, it becomes that kind of like fucking Lovecraftian thing of you give the person like 70% of the information and let your brain fill another 30%, and it makes it so scary when you're not presented with like enough time to fully like interpret what you're seeing. And Dude, it's so good.
When you extrapolate this movie out, you get Alien and you get The Thing. Like it's insane the lessons that were learned from this movie, despite what you might think about the movie, the fact that it's supernatural horror and The Thing and Alien or sci-fi horror. The lessons are evident. You see them when you watch this movie.
Dude, one of my absolute favorite shots of the movie too is there's a really cool shot towards the ending of the movie when they're doing the final exorcism, where they superimpose the demon's face over Reagan's.
Yes,
and it's almost like that fucking like Spider-Man thing from like the cartoons and old comics, where like half of his face, is outside of the mask
and half of it's Peter.
Yeah, like the right side of her face is superimposed with this kind of like transparent shot of the demon's face, and I think it was the actor like literally sitting in the same spot and then them combining the shots and making that like transparent
composition.
It's so fucking cool and unsettling.
Yeah,
man, I love that shot.
One of my favorite shots. It's probably kind of cheesy by today's standards, but one of my favorite shots is when Reagan is doing what she's doing and moving like she's moving, but she changes into silhouette, and in the background is the exact same shot of Pazuzu that we saw from the preamble to the movie. That statue.
Yeah, the statue. That's also
When
fucking awesome, dude.
Father Marin's the only one in the room that sees it, and he realizes what he's dealing with and who he's dealing with.
One thing also we didn't talk about with Marin too. He is now you can take like the Exorcist in different ways as far as like, are they talking about him? Are they talking about Karis?
Right.
But he's on the fucking poster of the movie.
Yeah.
We don't even know how he dies exactly. He is killed off screen, and you don't know if his heart gave out. You don't know if she killed him. You don't even know like that. That's so crazy when he just goes back into the room and he's fucking dead.
I feel like the implication is his heart gave out, but at the same time,
you don't know.
She's untied.
She is untied, and also just another like amazing performance by her when she's just like fucking giggling over there looking at him, and you're just like, fuck, man.
So you're led to believe through the whole movie, right, that Father Karras and Father Marin are main characters. How crazy that they both die.
Yeah. And the way that Karis dies is also just like really tragic. Like,
and it's foreshadowed.
His sacrifice is tough to watch because I really like his character. I think they spend just enough time like really fleshing out his story, and like how like you talked about how the kind of conflicted priests becomes like a trope, but it became a trope like because of this movie, like you said. So I still feel just like really, really connected to him as a character, and I think the stuff where he's he's wanting to leave, he no longer has faith in his job.
There is nothing about this character that you can't understand with a rational mind, right? Like everything he says and does makes sense up to this point. And can you think of a movie, by the way, that portrays the Catholic priest the way we see them portrayed in this movie?
Yeah,
his friend is stealing whiskey. They're drinking. He's smoking. Like
they're actual people.
They're
people. They're actual
doing
people.
a job, a 9-to-5 job.
Yeah, it's really interesting stuff. That is
they're portrayed more like every stereotypical detective in a detective movie, right? It's weird, and it works, and it almost feels like a commentary on the Catholic Church at the time. I don't know enough about the era to get into that, but it really feels like a commentary.
I also really like how human they are made as far as like the couple of main priests that you see. Like he has to go research exorcism because it's just not a thing they do anymore.
They explicitly say the Catholic Church is the one that still does it. And when you turn to the Catholic Church, it's like,
he like when he tells her, just as much about exorcism as a priest does,
right?
Because they just don't do it anymore,
right?
And I like that they're not conveniently experts. The only one who's really an expert. It's a weird
thing to say about a priest, but they're humanized, right?
Yeah,
in multiple ways. They have vices. They don't know things. They have to research things. He's building a case like a goddamn lawyer.
And what a way to to have your faith restored because you've been presented with the factual evidence of evil. Like when he is so conflicted about his faith, and for it to be confirmed not by finding God but by finding evil and finding like a soldier, like literally of the fucking devil,
and
is really cool. It's like
for that realization to culminate in the character's death.
Yeah, all at the same time. Yeah, it all happens at the same time.
Holy hell, man! The balls this movie has.
Oh, and also like one of the most like heartbreaking moments of the movie to me, maybe the most heartbreaking, is when he's dying and his buddy comes up to give him his last rites.
The last rites,
like,
and he's squeezing the hand for affirmation.
He's squeezing the hand for affirmation, and that's his buddy, who's the priest, is just like crying, and you're just like, oh my god, it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking.
And I feel like while I don't know if I've seen the movie. I don't remember, honestly, it's been so long if I've seen the movie or I've just heard about the movie. But for all that to be undone by The Exorcist 2,
I specifically never watched the second one.
I feel like I have to. I don't know that I would cover it on the podcast.
It has. Everyone says it is maybe the worst horror sequel.
It has
so like a 10% of Rotten Tomatoes
for this movie. So many implications. It kind of the idea that she is still possessed after these events undoes everything that Father Marin went through. Father Karras.
It is a slap in the face of the entire first movie.
Yes, exactly. The way people feel about Alien 3 is the way Exorcist 2 should be looked at.
So you said you think you've seen it, but you haven't for sure seen it? Is that what you said?
It's been 20, 25 years since I've seen this movie until recently. I cannot remember. If I watched Exorcist 2, I could give you an answer. If I were to go watch it again right now, I could tell you if I've seen it again or not. Off the top of my head, here's the thing. You and I said at the beginning of this episode, this movie kind of set the template for this type of movie, and I personally feel like a lot of these type movies got the wrong lessons learned. The Exorcist 2 may be the perfect example of that. I don't know. I don't really remember. I feel like recently a lot of possession and demon type supernatural movies have kind of turned a corner. Like I've heard a lot of things about what's one of the most recent movies? It came out like 2 or 3 years ago. I don't know, maybe a little bit longer. The one that all the trailers had with the nun flashing forward and around and stuff.
The Conjuring?
Maybe I think it was, if not The Conjuring, maybe part of the Conjuring franchise. That sounds right.
Because the nun is from, I think, the second Conjuring.
Okay.
Yeah.
It might be that. Like I hear that one. Like we've kind of evolved to that point, but in between The Exorcist and there, it seems like they're all kind of trying to repeat The Exorcist, but with more shock value, more weird body contortions, more weird stuff happening, as opposed to none of that stuff really happens in this movie until near the end.
They're focusing on like the special effect aspect.
By the way, the special effects in this movie are top notch.
The sound effects also, like the sound effects when her head turns will make your stomach crawl, dude. It is so fucking good. Holy shit, it's one of like the best sound effects ever. Like it is hard to watch and hard to listen to.
For people that didn't get my pea soup joke, that green goo was made with just pea soup on its own.
Every time someone gets puked on too, like I'm so OCD, I can't help but put myself in their shoes too, and I want to go just fucking lay in a bathtub of bleach.
When it goes in Father Marin's mouth, and he continues, whereas for Father Karras, he stopped what he was doing and went and cleaned himself up.
Yeah.
That not only speaks volumes to each of the characters, but I'm with Father Karras, man. You fucking puked in my mouth, and you're a goddamn demon.
You can just like fucking feel it as you are watching it too. It's like, oh, it's so gross. It's fucking tough, dude.
It's so bad.
Oh. The voice acting for Reagan's voices.
Oh my god.
Like the creepiest one to me is the like kind of British accent one.
Yes.
Because like what's interesting too
is if Star Wars taught me anything, nothing's creepier than a British accent.
Right? No, but like, so what became the trope is that super bassy, like super deep, distorted
yes.
exorcism possession voice. But they have a little bit of that in here, but it is like the combination of it being multiple people that are like possessed, like multiple spirits that are possessing her. Because like when she is just randomly changing voices is so creepy.
The moment when you find out that one language she's speaking is English, but in reverse, and you're like, excuse me?
Yeah.
I didn't realize she was the Beatles. Like, what? For those that don't know, there's a famous thing, I guess mid to late 60s. If you play the certain Beatles song backwards, it's all hail Satan and all this bullshit. That's the joke I'm getting at. But which is not a thing, by the way, but it was in the mid 60s for people that were anti rock and roll and all that.
Yeah, always gonna be freaking out over something.
Which, this movie being made in 73 and the Beatles thing happening in the 60s, I almost feel like that's an influence on it, right?
Yeah, very likely, especially with it being written by a guy while he was in college.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Yeah. But man, this movie is like you could do an entire analysis just like scene by scene because I feel like everything is important.
Now, you and I had not talked before or after until now that I picked this movie. I assume you had seen this movie before. Had it been a while since you'd seen it?
I watched it for the first time a very, very long time ago, like probably like 20 years ago when I was way too young to appreciate it. But you know, like I basically just like watched it because it was a horror movie, and you know my parents are horror nerds, so I think they had just been watching it, and I watched it with them. I watched it for the first time to be able to like fully comprehend it about 2 or 3 years ago, I'd say.
Oh wow, a lot more recent than me.
Yeah, so I was excited for you to get to watch it again because from the perspective of having seen it like 2 or 3 years ago. And just knowing how fucking like well it holds up, I was excited for you to get to watch it again.
Because
like
could not
holy
believe how modern this movie feels, even by 2022 standards. Yeah,
and it's funny because
and the outfits, and even maybe some of the filming techniques, while they hold up and they work, are not necessarily things we do today. That stuff aside, that stuff even included, it still feels like a very modern movie.
Because they created the blueprint that they're all aping, like that. Yeah. They're going through the motions of trying to be the Exorcist because it was just a fucking instant classic. You know, work of genius.
The expression you used while aping, sometimes or most of the time, is used in a negative connotation. Some movies, and a lot of movies, in fact, do it very well. But like you said, it is the blueprint these days. Like, I cannot imagine watching this movie in 1973, Jeff. I can't. I cannot imagine. We didn't even get Alien until 77. What was the thing? 81?
I think it was 82.
82? I cannot imagine watching this movie in 1973. What was that like?
Yeah. People, because I find this movie still, like, in some moments so creepy that it is just really unsettling. As I bet some people couldn't sleep the night after seeing this. Because I just can't imagine having no context for not knowing what you're in for, and for just how like unbelievably fucking balls to the wall this is, and how relentless it is at conveying how disturbing this demon is. It's just like crazy next level stuff.
Oh my god, I just got your text.
Yeah, the statue.
The statue
behind
in
the fog in the room.
Yes, behind the silhouette.
Amazing.
It's so good.
Yeah, it's fucking crazy. This movie is just so fucking good. I think I've kind of touched on everything that I had made mental notes to talk about. Did you have any other aspects of it you want to talk about before we kind of...
Other than just reiterating the type of balls this movie had. One of the most iconic musical themes in history, in cinema history, happens with a lady just walking down the street. It's very reminiscent to me of what we talked about with Prey, just lingering on scenes where there's nothing. Just lingering on shots of the jungle where nothing happens. Just to build that tension.
Another just like gut punch of a framing is at the very end where Father Dyer is walking around where Karis had died, and the window is boarded up in the background.
Oh my god!
And you're just like, oh, it's fuck. You feel in your soul, man. So good.
It's just so early
fucking
on
good.
that he dies. The director dies the way he does, and it, while horrifying in itself, is foreshadowing the way, in many ways, you could say our lead character dies.
Yeah. I think you can make a real point. Like, I think because like the poster showing Max von Sydow outside the house,
he's hardly in it. What do you think about it?
Yeah, the Exorcist to me is Father Karras. I think the poster and the title are kind of like misleading you, making you think.
I'm gonna
that
say something that I feel like only you, since you know me, will understand. But Father Merrin is basically Thanos, right? He's the big name,
Yeah.
the big character. He's on the posters. He's the big actor. He's barely in the movie. You hardly see him.
Yeah.
But when you do see him, it's big. A lot of the scenes you think of, the power of Christ compels you and all that, is all Father Merrin. When you look back on this movie, you remember Father Merrin very well. Going back and watching it, I was shocked at how little he's in the movie. I'm sure in the book he's a much larger character. I don't know. I've never read it. But in the movie, in the context of the movie, which is what this podcast is looking at it, he's hardly in the film. For him to make even such the impact that he does, and for it to focus more on Father Karras and, Linda Blair and her mom, the way that it does, shit, it focuses on the butler more than it focuses on Father Merrin. The director following him around, calling him a Nazi.
Dude, somebody's got to sew the mousetraps, okay? He's had an important job.
Oh, my God. Just that scene where I wanted to choke the director with him when he kept calling him a Nazi and shit. Like, my God.
Yep. He's the worst.
And holy hell, this movie, it hasn't even been 30 years since World War II at this point. Like, yeah, of course someone is like, oh, you're German? You must be a Nazi at that point, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm Swedish. He's not even a fucking German. But yeah.
Oh, shit. Fucking Berg is such a dick.
It's such a dick. But yeah. I don't know. I always liked this movie. I thoroughly enjoyed it again. I'm happy that I brought it up because when I brought it up, I hadn't watched it in 25 years.
Yeah, I was so ecstatic for you because I knew you were gonna have the same reaction that I did. Like, when I watched this again about 2 or 3 years ago, and having not ever seen it when I was old enough to fully appreciate it as a person watching it too, that I had gotten more into like film and film criticism and writing, and just realizing just how much this lives up to its reputation. Because a lot of the times when you go back to stuff that is that iconic, it like falls under the weight of its own legendary, like, iconic status.
Right,
and for this to be even better than like
Than how
what
you
imagine
it.
What you remember, or what it could be, based on like so many times you go back and like watch stuff and you're kind of let down because you're like, it's good for the time, but this is so good, so well executed in all aspects, and it is just a masterpiece. And yeah, as just fucking hell, just like what we've talked about. Also, just one other thing I noticed when I was scrolling back through the pictures on IMDb, how fucked up is the "help me" like inscribed on her stomach? That is haunting shit, dude.
I have to say also, watching this again as a father and looking at this in the context of a mother that is trying to do anything and everything, however desperate, to save her daughter, to help her daughter, and not understanding what is happening. And also, as a father, by the way, this has never happened. But just the idea that your child suddenly has a new imaginary friend that you can't explain is the reason why I told my wife when our kids were born, when we get a baby monitor, it's not going to be an internet connected one. It's going to be one that has its own wireless signal that you have to be sitting in our fucking driveway to manipulate.
Yeah.
Because that is one of the worst things as a parent you can hear, is that your child has a new friend that tells them to do things at night.
Yeah,
oh my God.
Fuck a lot of that, dude.
Just the idea of this in the movie. And by the way, is this the movie that criminalized the Ouija board? Is this the movie that I grew up hearing the evils of the Ouija board about in all the private schools I went to?
Probably.
Because
I'm sure it was probably
when they pulled it out in the movie. I thought it was going to play a bigger role than it did.
The little moment too where the little Ouija, I don't even know what you call it, the little controller thingy, like moves. That's enough in a movie to me. It's like, nope, I'm out.
Dude, the sound
Bye.
effect on the thing in the attic sounding like a face hugger to me is enough to just leave the house.
You also gotta love too, like it happens too with like this by the way, deservedly so won the Oscar for sound editing.
Oh my god.
The way that like the sound effects that it makes in the attic, and just the voices that Reagan has, the demonic voices, always being the loudest and most like present part of the sound is fucking unnerving and great. Because like every time that fucking demon is speaking, you feel it like piercing your fucking soul. It's like it's just loud enough to not be like cartoony, but it just like cuts through the rest of the rest of the sound, so like the rest of the tracks, and it's like fucking Christ, dude. No thanks.
Yeah, just that.
I'm out.
That sums up the whole episode. Just no thanks.
No thanks.
No thanks. Screenplay Rewind. The Exorcist. : No thanks.
But yeah, I think it's gonna be a wrap. Did you have anything else you want to talk about before we get the fuck out of here?
No, I think you and I pretty much covered everything that I had.
Yeah, I'm trying to get us out of here before 2 hours because we've gone a little long on this one, but it's been fun because we've had a lot of diverging topics, and this is one of the most important movies in horror, especially
maybe
for
even
myself.
In cinema.
Yeah, especially for horror, also in cinema, just in general. But I think it deserves extra time to really just break down how pivotal this was in like the way that horror would flow in the future is crazy. So
I'm curious though. You teased in our last episode when I said The Exorcist that your episode is going to be the closest one to Halloween that we do, and that you already had your movie picked. And I'm curious to know, you wouldn't tell me what it was.
Yeah, I have been holding it close to the vest. And just before we announce the next movie, if you would like to follow the show more, you can find us on Twitter at SPR Filmcast. If you have any other prompts or questions you'd like Ron and myself to answer, you can always email us as well, screenplayrewind@gmail.com. Any subscriptions, likes, reviews, anything you can help us out with on any platform you happen to find us on is always greatly appreciated. And if you do like the show, please share it with your friends. Word of mouth is the best way the podcast can grow nowadays, since there are like 9 trillion of them out in the fucking ether. But yeah, my next movie selection,
please.
I've been wanting to have this one on the show for a while, and I think it is so funny that you queued it up with The Exorcist, because it is one of the most influenced by Exorcist movies, I think, of the last several years.
Wedding Crashers. Clearly. I have no idea, by the way, why that was the movie that popped into my head when I said that. Apparently, there is something there. We must cover Wedding Crashers at some point now.
At some point. But yeah, it is heavily influenced by the tone of The Exorcist, also dealing with supernatural horror in a way that I think is going to disturb you.
Oh, good.
Like it does me.
Lawnmowers involved?
We're going to be talking Hereditary.
Okay, I haven't seen Hereditary at all.
Hereditary is very Exorcist in its tone, and circling around a family and circling around supernatural horror in very, very interesting ways, just like The Exorcist.
Knowing that it's Hereditary, I feel like I should have seen this coming, because when you watched it, you texted me about it a few times. And I mean, for you to text me about a movie as much as you did, I should have seen that coming, because usually you're like, hey, this movie's good, you should go watch it, and that's the end of it. But there's probably 2, 3, maybe 4 times you're like, by the way, Hereditary.
I am super excited to watch it and to hear some of your reactions to it.
Yeah, I have heard on several podcasts about the movie, but never any details about the movie. I've been curious to watch it. I've never gotten to it.
I want you to watch it, Ron, by yourself and in the dark.
Oh, God.
I want you to really...
Oh, God.
I'm telling you, man, turn off the lights.
No.
Watch it late at night.
No.
No one else around. And just settle in, dude. Settle in, dude, because Hereditary is fucking bonkers, and it's gonna be really fun to talk about. And I'm
the poster
super excited.
for this movie is the chick crying with the little like crown of thorns thing around her head, right?
I think. Let me verify.
I'm also trying to verify. This is always a race to see who can do it.
It's not really like a crown, but it does have two. It is the mom and the daughter.
What am I
on the
thinking
poster?
of?
I know. No clue.
Oh, wait. I think I know what I'm thinking of. Hang on. Am I thinking of, what is it? What's it called? God damn it, I'm blanking on the name. God damn you, whiskey.
God, was it Kariki? God damn you, Kariki.
Hibiki.
Oh, Hibiki.
God damn it, Jeff, get it right. No, I'm thinking of, I know what I'm thinking of, but I can't type it out in a way that IMDb gives it to me. I don't know how to spell it.
Hereditary, just while Ron is searching for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is available for rent on all of the normal platforms like Apple and fucking Amazon Prime and shit. If you want to get it for free, you can get it for free via a Showtime trial.
Oh, okay.
On either Paramount, I think they also have one, like a Showtime trial you can do through like Amazon Prime. So if you have a Showtime trial that you can set up on an email, you can get it for free. If you need to get it for free. So just wanted to make that known. But yeah, I'm stoked. Hereditary was almost our almost my Halloween selection last year, actually. But I ended up kind of co-opting it for us doing a commentary of The Lighthouse, because that just was a really, really fun recording to do last year. But yeah, this has been one I've had planned for a Halloween for a while, because I think it's going to be fun to talk about. So
there is, it's interesting you mentioned The Lighthouse, because you just reminded me. I had a mental note to plug another podcast, if I may. I have mentioned before on the podcast, the Directors Guild of America podcast.
Mm-hmm.
There is an episode where Ryan Johnson interviewed, God damn it, internet, help me out. I'm trying. It's loading. Fucking Robert Eggers about The Lighthouse.
Yeah, I have to listen to that immediately.
Ryan Johnson is the one conducting the interview. Now, here's the thing about Directors Guild of America podcast. It's directors interviewing directors. Directors are directors. They're not interviewers. A lot of the times, that podcast is kind of so-so in the questions being asked or whatever. But there is some unique perspectives, right? Because they are directors themselves interviewing other directors. And there's a few moments in this podcast that are especially good because Ryan Johnson is just like, how or why or when, right? And Ryan Johnson was actually very good. He was actually one of the better interviewers that I've listened to so far. The Knives Out episode, of Ryan Johnson is highly recommended, but the episode on The Lighthouse where Ryan Johnson is conducting the interview with Robert Eggers is really good.
Because I can just imagine, because like Ryan Johnson is just a really likable dude.
Oh yeah,
in interviews and stuff. He seems like a genuinely cool guy to just like get a beer with. He just seems incredibly nice and just so fucking insanely talented. And he's also a film nerd too. So I think he was a perfect selection for that, because like I could just imagine him being like, dude, how the fuck did you make that?
The film nerd aspect of Ryan Johnson you just mentioned is what makes it good, because you can tell when he goes off script.
Yeah.
There's times that he's like, he sounds like the Clear Eyes guy. He's just like, when did you do this, or why did you want to do this? And then Robert Eggers will say something, and Ryan Johnson will say something like, oh, how did you end up doing this? Or when did you do this? Or what made you do this? Like, you can tell just by the tone in his voice.
He's geeking out over
when he goes off script. Yes. So when he starts geeking out, it's really good. And it's kind of endearing for Ryan Johnson, actually, even though he's endearing on his own. It's really good. I had a mental note to plug that, and I forgot about it until you specifically mentioned The Lighthouse just now.
Yeah, I will be listening to that ASAP, because
it's really good.
Love me some Ryan Johnson, love me some Eggers. I need to watch The Northman, or whatever.
I have been meaning to get around to that forever. We might just have to cover it at some point when we get out of Spooky Month.
Just to give us an excuse to finally fucking watch it. I've been meaning to watch it for fucking months.
Yeah,
but I think when I last sat down to like be ready to rent it, it was still at the like $19.99 rental price. Dude, and I refused to pay that for a fucking digital rental. I'm still trying to rent goddamn Ghostbusters Afterlife, and it's still just on Stars and nowhere else. Ever since it left theaters, it's been on Stars, and I'm like, I've already used your free trial. Can I just get it on Apple or something, please? Yeah,
I'm a huge Ghostbusters fan, and I want to watch that movie so bad.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not paying $13 a month for 1 month to watch one movie on Stars.
Do you have like an extra email where you can just kind of like get another trial?
They do that shit by credit card number at this point.
Oh, that's whack.
So
they wised up.
they got smart to us.
Yeah, bastards.
How dare you? How dare you figure out how I'm cheating you?
Selfish pricks.
You goddamn selfish bastards. I want to cheat you. Let me cheat you. Yeah.
And on that note, we will let that be a closeout of the episode. But yeah, this has been super fun. Both talking about just like it's almost like a good continuation of, I think, like our conversations we were having in Your Next.
I believe
about
so.
How
yeah.
like about how certain stuff can like end up influencing a lot of future projects, and then like with something like The Exorcist, like becoming like a just it's super important moment in history for like
Cinema.
the fucking art form. Yeah,
Not
it
just
becomes,
movies, but cinema. Right.
Becomes like a turning point. Like it sets like a new standard for what the type of movie can be, what movies in the future can use to kind of draw on and learn from, and just influence the tone of so many future movies.
And we've often talked about really like the ups and downs of what the horror genre has gone through. And you just want to talk about masterclass in horror, right?
Yeah. All the way
the
around.
Slow build. You know, as the audience member, where this is going, because you know what's happening. And just the slow build this movie takes. It takes its exquisite time to get there. And that's not a negative criticism. Like, it adds to this movie so much.
Yeah, it lives and breathes.
It
So
really
good.
does.
But,
it's so good.
Yeah. Been a blast to talk about. Super stoked and excited to dig into Hereditary.
I'm curious. I'm genuinely curious.
I'm so excited to talk about it because at the very fucking least, there is interesting shit to talk about. So it will be fun to record. I am excited. I am also excited that you had not seen it previously and to get to introduce
it's new to me.
Because I've seen it a few times, and to get to introduce you to it is like the bread and butter of what this podcast is supposed to be. So I'm stoked. So yeah, check it out. Again, free trial through Showtime on it's like Prime and like
cool.
I think Paramount Plus always has a plug-in,
right?
Kind of like sideways subscription trial you can do for them. So yeah, we appreciate you listening and have a good night.